I sat in the front row while my sister whispered to my aunt that I was a leech. She had spent months telling everyone I didn't deserve the inheritance. Then the lawyer opened the will and read my name first. The family home was mine. My sister got a single sealed envelope, one that contained the truth about everything she had done. Before I tell you what that letter said, hit subscribe and drop your city below. The home had been in our family for 3 generations. My sister thought it was hers by birthright, and my parents never corrected her. For years, I watched her take what she wanted while I stayed quiet. But when the will was read, the lawyer didn't just say my name, he handed my sister that envelope. She tore it open right there in the packed living room. Her face went pale. Then she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Everyone wanted to know what was inside. But to understand why she got the house, and I got the truth, I have to take you back 20 years to the summer that changed everything. That summer, I was 8 years old. My sister Alina was 12. We were at our grandmother's house, the same house where the will would be read 18 years later. It was a Victorian with a wraparound porch and a cherry tree in the back that dropped fruit all over the driveway every July. Grandma Helen lived alone after Grandpa died. She had a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Alina was always the star. She sang at family gatherings. She brought home straight A's. She had a bedroom with lavender walls and a canopy bed, and our parents put her school photos in the nicest frames. I had the room next to the laundry. My photos went in a drawer. I didn't mind it much back then. That was just how things were. But that summer, something shifted. Grandma Helen started taking me along when she went to check on the house's old furnace in the basement. She showed me how the pipes ran, where the water shutoff was, how to bleed a radiator. Alina never came. She said the basement smelled like mothballs and she didn't want to get her clothes dirty. Grandma would just nod and say, "That's fine, Ellie." Then she'd hand me a flashlight and say, "Hold this steady, sweetheart." I didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought she just needed an extra pair of hands. But looking back, I realized she was teaching me something she never taught my sister, how the house worked. Every creak, every leak, every window that stuck in August. By the time I was 10, I could change a fuse box without calling anyone. Alina couldn't find the main water valve if her life depended on it. Our grandmother had a favorite chair in the living room, a worn velvet recliner that faced the front window. She'd sit there in the afternoons with a cup of tea and watch the mailman walk up the street. One afternoon when I was 9, I came home from school and found her crying. Not loud sobbing, just silent tears running down her face while she stared out the glass. I asked what was wrong. She said, "Your mother called. She wants me to move into an apartment. Says this house is too much for me to handle alone." I sat on the arm of her chair. "Do you want to move?" She looked at me then, really looked. "No, sweetheart. I built a life in this house. I raised your father here. I want to die in this house." I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there. She patted my hand and said, "You're a good listener, that's rare." A week later, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My mother said, "The house is worth $700,000 at least. If Helen moves into assisted living, we could sell it, split the proceeds between us and your brother." My father said, "She won't move. She's stubborn." My mother said, "Then we need to get power of attorney for her own good." I didn't know what power of attorney meant. I was 9. But I knew the way my mother said, "for her own good," sounded like the way she said, "You'll thank me later," when she made me eat broccoli. Something didn't sit right. That same evening, Grandma Helen called me into her bedroom. She was sitting at her vanity, brushing her silver hair. She said, "Come here." I stood beside her. She opened the top drawer and pulled out a small key on a blue ribbon. "This opens the safe deposit box at the bank on Main Street," she said. "If anything ever happens to me, you go to that box before you talk to anyone. You understand?" I nodded. I didn't understand at all. She put the key in my hand and closed my fingers around it. "Don't tell your mother. Don't tell your father. Don't tell Alina. This is between you and me." I put the key in my jewelry box. I didn't think about it again for 2 years. But when I was 11, Grandma Helen had a stroke. She survived, but she couldn't live alone anymore. My parents moved her into a facility 45 minutes away, and then they started making plans for the house. My father hired a contractor to fix the roof, then argued about the bill. My mother cleaned out Grandma's closets and donated everything without asking. She found the safe deposit box key in my jewelry box one afternoon when she was tidying my room. She held it up and said, "What's this?" I said, "Grandma gave it to me." She frowned. "For what?" "I don't know." She put the key in her pocket. "I'll take care of it." I didn't argue. I was 11. I didn't understand that she was taking control of something that was never meant to be hers. I didn't understand that the key opened a box containing a will, a deed, and a letter addressed to me. A letter my grandmother had written 6 years earlier, after my grandfather died, when she started planning exactly how to protect the house from her own children. The facility where Grandma Helen lived was a half-hour drive. I visited every Saturday. Alina came once a month, and only because our mother made her. The nurses knew me by name. I brought her crossword puzzles and those soft candies she liked. She wasn't the same after the stroke. Her speech was slower. She forgot things, but she never forgot me. "The house," she'd say, gripping my hand. "Did you go to the bank?" I'd say, "Mom took the key." Her face would fall. She'd stare at the ceiling and say, "Then they won, they won." I didn't understand what she meant until I was 12, when a letter arrived at our house. It was from an attorney. It said that my grandmother had filed a new will 6 months before the stroke, and that the previous will, the one my parents had been counting on, had been revoked. The new will left the house to me. My parents lost their minds. My father called the attorney and screamed at him. My mother said Grandma Helen wasn't of sound mind when she signed it. They threatened to contest. They hired a lawyer. They spent $30,000 trying to break that will. But the attorney had video of my grandmother signing, along with a letter from her doctor confirming her mental capacity on that date. The house stayed in trust. I was named the beneficiary upon turning 25. My parents couldn't sell it. They couldn't borrow against it. They could only live in it. And that's when the real war began. Alina blamed me. She said I manipulated Grandma. She told everyone at school that I was a snake. She stopped speaking to me except to make snide comments at the dinner table. Our parents walked on eggshells around her and treated me like I had committed a crime. I was 12 years old, and I had become the villain in my own family without doing anything except being loved by my grandmother. Over the next 8 years, the tension only grew. Alina got everything she wanted: a car, a trust fund from our parents, a full ride to a private college. I worked part-time jobs, paid for my own clothes, and saved every penny. I told myself it didn't matter. I had the house. I had what Grandma wanted me to have. But every time I walked past Alina's room, past her new furniture and her designer bags, I felt like the outsider in my own home. The summer I turned 20, everything came to a head. My father got sick, liver disease, 8 months of hospital visits, then he was gone. At the funeral, Alina stood beside our mother, dressed in black, accepting condolences like a widow. I stood behind them, barely acknowledged. That night, after everyone left, my mother called me into the kitchen. She said, "You know your father always wanted to change that will." I said, "He tried, he couldn't." She said, "Now that he's gone, I'm going to try again, for Alina's sake." I said, "The house is mine, Mom." She said, "We'll see about that." She hired an attorney. She filed a motion to break the trust, claiming undue influence. She said I had manipulated my grandmother while she was vulnerable. The court date was set for 6 months later. 6 months of depositions, of digging through old records, of my mother and sister painting me as a scheming daughter who stole the family home. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I was 20 years old, working at a coffee shop. I couldn't afford the hourly rates. So I called the attorney who had handled my grandmother's will, the same one who had recorded the video and the doctor's letter. His name was Martin Reeves. He was 71 years old and retired, but he agreed to take my case pro bono because, he said, Helen was my friend and she told me exactly what she wanted. We prepared for trial. We gathered evidence. We had witnesses, nurses from the facility, neighbors who remembered Grandma Helen's clear mind, a handwriting expert who authenticated the will's signatures. And then, 3 weeks before the hearing, my mother dropped the case. No explanation, no apology, she just withdrew the motion. I thought I had won. I thought it was over. But Alina wasn't done. She had been planning something else, something I wouldn't see coming until the reading of the will. The will my mother had finally accepted, the one that would be read in a stuffy conference room with a lawyer we had never met. And that's where she delivered the letter, the sealed envelope, the truth about her own behavior that she had spent 20 years hiding. I'll tell you exactly what was in that letter, but first, you need to know what my sister did the night before the will reading. The night before the will reading, I got a text from an unknown number. It was 11:30. I was in my apartment reviewing the attorney's summary one last time. The text said, "You think you won. Tomorrow you'll see what winning costs." I knew it was Alina. She had always been dramatic, but this felt different, calculated. I didn't respond. I closed my laptop and tried to sleep. I couldn't. At 2 in the morning, my phone rang. It was the security company for the house, the Victorian, the one I technically owned but hadn't moved into yet. They said the alarm had been triggered. Front door. I said I'd be there in 20 minutes. I drove through empty streets. The house sat dark at the end of the block. No lights on. No sign of forced entry. I keyed in the code and walked through the living room, past Grandma Helen's empty chair, past the kitchen where I had learned to cook, toward the front door. The alarm panel showed that the door had been opened and closed twice. No one was inside, but someone had been there. I checked the upstairs bedrooms. Alina's old room was untouched. My room was untouched, but the attic door was open. The attic where Grandma Helen had stored the original deed, the old family photos, the trunks I hadn't looked through since I was a child. I climbed the stairs. The pull string for the light was swinging. Someone had just been standing there, and on the floor next to a dusty trunk was a single piece of paper, handwritten, my grandmother's handwriting, but I knew she had never written it. It said, "To my dear granddaughter Alina, you always understood what this family needed. I trust you to do the right thing." I picked it up. The paper was crisp. The ink was fresh. This had been written in the last few hours. Alina had broken into the house to plant a forged letter, something she could use to claim that Grandma Helen had changed her mind after the stroke, that she had intended to leave the house to Alina all along. I took a photo. I put the letter in my pocket, and I called my attorney at 7 in the morning. He said, "Bring it to the reading. Don't mention it until she does." So I went to the will reading with the forged letter in my bag, the alarm report in my email, and the knowledge that my own sister had committed a felony to steal a house she had never earned. The attorney's office was downtown, gray carpet, fluorescent lights, a conference table with 8 chairs. My mother arrived first, dressed in black, pearls around her neck as if she were attending a second funeral. Alina came 5 minutes later, wearing a cream blazer and holding a leather portfolio. She sat across from me and did not say hello. My mother sat between us like a referee. The attorney was a man I had never met, Robert Chen. He introduced himself as the executor. He said he had been my grandmother's attorney for the final 3 years of her life after Martin Reeves retired. I had never heard his name. Neither had my mother. The room went quiet. Mr. Chen opened a folder and said, "Helen Montgomery executed her final will and testament on February 14th, 10 years ago. The will was witnessed and notarized. It has never been contested successfully. Today, I will read the distribution of assets." Alina leaned forward. My mother folded her hands. "The house at 27 Oak Street," Mr. Chen said, "is left in full to Claudia Montgomery." That was me. The room didn't move. I had known this for years, but hearing it spoken aloud in that room, in front of them, felt different. It felt like a verdict. Alina said, "That can't be right." Mr. Chen said, "It is correct. The house passes free and clear of any claims. There is also a separate provision, also addressed to Claudia." He slid a document across the table. A bank check. $50,000 from a savings account my grandmother had kept secret. My mother's face went white. Alina said, "This is ridiculous. She was not of sound mind. Everyone knows that." Mr. Chen looked at her. "The will includes a video statement from the testator, recorded on the date of signing, in the presence of her doctor. I have a copy if you would like to view it." Alina sat back. She had heard about the video, everyone had. She knew she couldn't fight it, but she had one more card to play. She opened her leather portfolio and slid a sealed envelope across the table. My grandmother gave me this letter last year. It supersedes the will. It says the house should be sold and the proceeds split between me and Claudia. Mr. Chen did not reach for it. He said, "I have a letter as well, one your grandmother wrote specifically for this moment. She instructed me to give it to the person who was not the primary beneficiary." Elinor's eyes narrowed. "What?" Mr. Chen pulled out a sealed envelope. He slid it across the table to Elinor. "She said you would know exactly what it refers to." Elinor stared at the envelope like it was a live snake. She didn't open it. Mr. Chen said, "I was also instructed to read the following statement if you presented a document of your own. Your grandmother anticipated that someone might attempt to introduce a forged or coerced letter. She said, quote, 'If Elinor tries to claim I changed my mind, she is lying. I never wavered. The house is Claudia's. Tell Elinor the truth about the attic.'" The room froze. My mother looked at Elinor. Elinor's face drained of color. She knew. I reached into my bag and pulled out the paper I had found in the attic the night before. I set it on the table. "I found this in the attic at 2 in the morning, I said. "After the alarm went off, someone broke in to plant it." Mr. Chen examined it. He glanced at Elinor. "This handwriting is not consistent with Helen Montgomery's signature on file. This is a forgery." Elinor said nothing. My mother said, "That's a serious accusation, Robert." Mr. Chen said, "It's a matter of forensic analysis. I've already contacted the county clerk's office about the trust documents. There will be an investigation." Elinor stood up. She grabbed her portfolio. She said, "This isn't over." She walked out. My mother followed, shooting me a look I couldn't read. I was alone in the conference room with Mr. Chen and the sealed envelope that was still sitting in front of Elinor's empty chair. I pointed at it. "What's in it?" Mr. Chen picked it up. "Your grandmother wrote this 4 years before she died. She told me to give it to Elinor at the reading, but only if Elinor tried to contest the will. But she didn't open it. She was afraid to, which means she knows exactly what it says." I sat with that for a moment. My grandmother had known. She had known Elinor would come for the house. She had planned for this confrontation years in advance, just like she had planned for my father's attempt at power of attorney, just like she had planned everything. Mr. Chen handed me the envelope. "She also said if Elinor refused to open it, I should give it to you. She said, 'Claudia will know what to do with it.'" I took it. The envelope was thick, heavy. I didn't open it there. I waited until I got home, sat on the floor of my apartment, and tore the seal. Inside was a letter handwritten, dated 4 years before my grandmother died, and a stack of photographs, old photographs, of Elinor, and of something I had never known existed. A second property, a cabin, upstate, deeded to Elinor alone. The letter explained everything. The letter was dated 4 years before my grandmother died. It was written in her hand, but the handwriting was unsteady, like she had been crying while she wrote it. She explained that years ago, she had discovered something about Elinor. Not a phase, not teenage rebellion. Something that changed the way she saw her oldest granddaughter forever. She wrote, "Elinor has a child, a daughter, born when she was 17. She gave the baby up for adoption and never told anyone. I found the paperwork in her room while she was away at college. I never confronted her. I never told your mother. But I knew that if I left everything to you, she would come for the house. She would destroy you to get it, so I set the cabin aside for her. Quietly. She doesn't know it exists yet. She will only learn about it if she chooses to fight the will. If she fights, the cabin will be her peace offering. If she doesn't fight, she never needed it." I read the paragraph 3 times. Elinor had a child, a daughter she gave away, and my grandmother had known for years and said nothing. She had used that secret to build a trap. If Elinor contested the will, she would open the letter at the reading and discover 2 things: the cabin and the fact that her grandmother knew about the baby. The choice was simple. Accept the cabin and walk away from the house, or keep fighting and lose everything, including the secret she had buried for 20 years. That was why Elinor had left the room without opening the envelope. She suspected what was inside, and she couldn't bear to see it confirmed in front of our mother, in front of the attorney, in front of me. I sat on my apartment floor with the photographs spread around me. Pictures of the cabin, a small A-frame on a lake surrounded by white pines, a dock, a rowboat pulled up on shore, and a photo of my grandmother standing on the porch holding a baby with tears in her eyes. The baby, Elinar's daughter. I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to confront Elinar immediately. Part of me wanted to call my mother and tell her everything. But I remembered my grandmother's voice from the video. "You will know what to do when the time comes." I put the photos back in the envelope, and I started driving, not to my mother's house, not to Elinar's apartment, to the cabin. It took 3 hours to get there. The roads narrowed. The pavement turned to gravel. The lake appeared between the trees, gray and still under a November sky. I parked in a dirt patch and walked to the front door. It was unlocked. The cabin was empty but clean. Someone had been maintaining it. I walked through the rooms. A small kitchen with a cast iron stove. A bedroom with a quilt folded at the foot of the bed. A stack of firewood by the fireplace. On the mantel, there was a framed photograph. My grandmother and a young woman I didn't recognize. They were sitting on this same porch, laughing. The young woman had Elinar's eyes. I turned the frame over. On the back, in my grandmother's handwriting, "Rebecca, age 21, a beautiful girl. I have watched her from a distance for 20 years. She looks like her mother." Rebecca, that was the baby's name. She was 21 now. My grandmother had known her, had watched her grow up, had kept the secret from everyone, including Elinar. I sat on the porch and called Mr. Chen. He answered on the first ring. "I assume you opened the envelope." I said, "There's a cabin, and a baby, my sister's baby." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your grandmother asked me to protect that information until the right moment. She said Elinar needed to discover the truth on her own terms, not have it thrown at her. She didn't open the envelope. She left it on the table." "I know. That's why I gave it to you. Your grandmother said the cabin belongs to Elinar, but the truth about Rebecca belongs to no one. It's a gift or a weapon, depending on how you use it." I hung up and stared at the lake. For years, I had believed my grandmother chose me because I was the one who loved her purely. But now I understood. She chose me because she knew I could carry the weight of the truth. She had given Elinar the cabin, a physical place of her own, and she had given me the house. But she had given me the letter, too. The knowledge, the responsibility. I drove home through the dark. When I got back to the city, I found a message from my mother. "Elinar wants to meet, tomorrow, at the house. She says she's ready to talk." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I arrived at the Victorian at 10 o'clock. My mother was already there, sitting in Grandma Helen's velvet chair, a cup of cold tea beside her. Elinar stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the street. She looked thinner than she had at the reading. Worn. She turned when I walked in. "Did you read the letter?" "Yes." "Then you know." "I know about the baby and the cabin." My mother's head snapped up. "What baby?" Elinar's face crumpled. She sat down on the stairs, buried her face in her hands, and then she told us everything. She was 17, a senior in high school. The father was a boy from the next town, a senior too. They were careless once, and that was enough. She kept the pregnancy from our parents for 5 months. When she couldn't hide it anymore, she went to Grandma Helen, not our mother, Grandma. Grandma Helen handled everything. She arranged for Elinar to stay with a cousin upstate. She found a private adoption agency. She was in the delivery room when the baby was born. A girl, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, healthy, perfect. Elinar held her for 1 hour, then she signed the papers and walked out. She came home. She finished high school. She went to college. She never spoke of it again. But Grandma Helen never forgot. She checked on Rebecca through the adoption agency. She sent birthday presents anonymously. She drove upstate every year on the anniversary of the birth and sat in a diner across the street from the agency, just to be near the place where her great-granddaughter had last been recorded. Elinar finished her story. The room was silent. My mother was crying without making a sound. I sat on the bottom step beside Elinar. I said, Grandma left you the cabin. It's yours, deeded in your name. She wanted you to have a place of your own. Elinor looked at me. I don't deserve it. She thought you did. We sat for a long time. Then my mother spoke. She said, I need to know her name. Elinor said, Rebecca. Her name is Rebecca. My mother said, where is she now? Elinor shook her head. I don't know. Grandma knew. She sent me updates every year, but I never opened them. I couldn't. I stood up. I walked to my car, and I retrieved the envelope with the photos. I brought it back inside and handed it to Elinor. She opened it slowly. She pulled out the photograph of Grandma Helen and Rebecca on the porch of the cabin. She stared at it for a long time. Then she started to cry. She looks happy, she said. She looks loved, I said. Elinor looked at me. I don't know how to be her mother. I don't even know if she wants to know me. I said, that's not for us to decide, but the door is open now. That's more than you had yesterday. That night, I drove home alone. I didn't go to the Victorian. I didn't go to the cabin. I went to my apartment and sat in the dark, and I realized that my grandmother had not been choosing sides. She had been preparing both of us for a collision she knew was coming. She gave me the house because I would protect it. She gave Elinor the cabin because she knew Elinor would eventually need a place to land, a place to rebuild. And she gave me the letter because she trusted me to carry the truth until the moment it could heal instead of destroy. The will reading had been the battlefield, but this was the aftermath, and the real work was only beginning. Tomorrow, I would drive back to the cabin with Elinor. We would open the door together, and on the mantel, waiting for her, would be the address of a young woman named Rebecca who had never known her birth mother's name. But that's Elinor's story to tell, not mine. Mine ends here, at a kitchen table in a quiet apartment, with a cup of cold coffee and a letter from a woman who knew exactly what she was doing when she wrote my name in ink. My grandmother gave me the house, but she gave me something more valuable. She gave me the chance to be the person who holds the truth without using it as a weapon. I think that's what she meant when she said I was the one who understood. The morning after Elinor told us everything, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching the streetlights go out one by one. My phone buzzed. A text from Elinor. Can we go to the cabin today? I wrote back, I'll pick you up at 9. When I pulled up to her apartment, she was already waiting on the steps. No makeup, hair pulled back, a canvas bag over her shoulder. She looked smaller than I remembered, softer. She got in without a word. We drove the 3 hours in silence, past the strip malls and the farms and the forests, until the road turned to gravel and the lake appeared through the trees. The cabin looked the same, gray-blue in the November light. Smoke from a neighbor's chimney drifted across the water. I parked and we walked to the front door. I handed Elinor the key my grandmother had given me years ago. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was cold and still. Sunlight fell across the wooden floor in long rectangles. Elinor walked through the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom. She touched the quilt on the bed. She ran her hand along the fireplace mantel. And then she saw the framed photograph, Grandma Helen and Rebecca on the porch laughing. Elinor picked it up. Her fingers traced the glass over her daughter's face. She didn't cry. She just stood there, holding it, breathing. I said, there's more. I walked to the desk in the corner and opened the drawer. Inside, I had placed a small envelope the day before, after my first visit. Inside was a piece of paper with an address. Rebecca's last known address, according to the adoption agency records my grandmother had kept. Elinor took the envelope. She opened it. She read the address. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. She said, I don't know if I can do this. I said, you don't have to decide today. She nodded. Then she walked out onto the porch and sat in the chair where our grandmother used to sit. I sat beside her. The lake was flat and gray, the trees bare. A heron stood motionless in the shallows. Elinor said, I spent 20 years pretending that baby didn't exist. I told myself it was the right choice, that she was better off without me. But Grandma never let me forget. She sent those letters every year, and I never opened them because I knew that if I did, I would fall apart. And I was right. I'm falling apart now. I said, "That's not falling apart. That's finally letting yourself feel something you buried." She looked at me. "How did you get so wise?" I laughed. "Grandma, she had a lot of practice with both of us." We sat until the sun went down. Then we locked the cabin and drove home. She didn't say another word about Rebecca, but I noticed she was holding the address in her hand the whole way back. 2 weeks passed. I moved into the Victorian. Slowly, room by room, I made it my own. I kept Grandma Helen's velvet chair. I painted the kitchen a soft green. I hung the photograph of her and Grandpa on the wall above the fireplace. Alina and I started talking more. Real conversations, not the tense exchanges we had grown up with. She told me about her job, her apartment, the small life she had built. I told her about my classes, my plans for the house. We were careful with each other, like people learning to walk on ice. Then one Sunday, she called. Her voice was different, steady but fragile, like glass that had been annealed. "I contacted the agency," she said. "They passed a letter to Rebecca," she wrote back. I held my breath, and she wants to meet me. The meeting was arranged for a Saturday in December at a coffee shop in the town where Rebecca lived, 3 hours north. Alina asked me to come with her. I said yes. We drove up together. Alina was quiet, her hands clenched in her lap the whole way. We arrived early. We ordered coffee and sat at a table by the window. Alina kept looking at the door, and then a young woman walked in. She had Alina's eyes, the same curve of the jaw. She was 22 now, with dark hair and a cautious smile. She walked to our table and stopped. Alina stood up. They looked at each other for a long, trembling moment, and then Rebecca said, "Hi, Mom." Alina broke. She reached out and took Rebecca's hand, and they stood there in the middle of that coffee shop, holding each other while the barista pretended not to watch. I slipped out and sat in the car. This was their moment. I was just the person who drove them there. 40 minutes later, Alina came out alone. She was crying, but she was smiling too. She got in the car and said, she wants to see the cabin. We made plans to go up together, the three of us, the following spring. Alina and Rebecca would spend a weekend at the lake. I would stay at the Victorian. I had done my part. But there was one more thing my grandmother had left for me, a final surprise. A week before Christmas, I was cleaning out the attic of the Victorian, the same attic where Alina had planted the forged letter. I found a loose floorboard under a stack of old blankets. I pried it up. Beneath it, there was a metal box. I opened it. Inside was a second letter in my grandmother's handwriting, dated 1 month before she died. It was addressed to me. It said, "Claudia, if you are reading this, then everything has gone according to plan. You have the house. Alina has the cabin, and you have found this box. Inside, there is a deed, not to the house, not to the cabin, to a small plot of land on the north side of the lake. I bought it 40 years ago with your grandfather. We never told anyone. It has no buildings on it, but it has a view of the water, and it is where I want my ashes scattered. You will know the spot. It's where we used to watch the sunsets. The one place that was always just ours. Take care of Alina. She will need you. And take care of yourself. You have always been stronger than you know." I sat on the attic floor with the deed in my hands. My grandmother had planned for every outcome except the one where we found each other again. And maybe that was the real gift. Not the house, not the cabin, not the land, but the chance to have a family again, built on something stronger than obligation. The next spring, we scattered her ashes at sunset. Alina and Rebecca and I stood on the north shore, watching the light turn gold across the water. Rebecca held the urn. Alina read the letter. I threw the first handful of ash into the wind. And I realized that my grandmother had been right all along. She didn't choose me because I was the favorite. She chose me because I could keep the promise, and I did. But the letter in the sealed envelope at the will reading, Alina never opened it. She never needed to. She already knew the truth about herself. She had known for 20 years. She just needed someone to hand her the permission to face it. I was that person, and that is the story of how my sister got a sealed envelope, and I got a family. And I got a family. Not the one I was born into. not the one that felt broken for so many years, but something new. Something we built from the wreckage of a will reading and a sealed envelope that held a truth none of us expected. My sister never did open that letter. She still has it, tucked away in a drawer at the cabin. Sometimes I think she keeps it as a reminder of who she used to be and who she decided to become instead. The truth inside wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror. And when you finally look into a mirror, you have to decide whether to flinch or to see yourself clearly. Alina decided to see. Rebecca comes to the cabin now every few months. She and Alina are learning each other slowly, the way you learn a new language. They don't try to make up for lost time. They just show up. They sit on the porch. They watch the lake. They let the years between them dissolve in their own time. And me, I live in the Victorian. I fixed the furnace. I painted the kitchen green. I sit in Grandma Helen's chair and watch the mailman walk up the street just like she did. I don't think about the house as something I won. I think about it as something I was trusted to hold. That's the part that surprised me most. I spent years believing the inheritance was about property, about proving I was worthy, about winning a battle my sister and I never should have fought. But the real inheritance was the responsibility, the promise, the quiet work of keeping something safe for the next person who needs it. If you've ever been the one holding a secret that could destroy someone, or the one keeping a promise that costs you something, you know what I mean. The hardest thing isn't the truth itself. It's what you choose to do with it. My grandmother knew I wouldn't use the letter as a weapon. She knew I would wait until Alina was ready to face it herself. And I did. Not because I'm noble, because I loved my sister more than I wanted to be right. So here's what I want to leave you with. Sometimes the inheritance isn't the house or the money. Sometimes it's the truth you decide not to speak until the moment it can heal instead of wound. And when you hand that sealed envelope to someone, you're not delivering a verdict. You're giving them a choice. If you held that letter, what would you do with it? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that family isn't about who gets what. It's about who shows up after everything else falls apart. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next story.